Now, a failed asylum seeker whose deportation flight was blocked has now pleaded guilty to raping a 15-year-old girl. Mr. Mayela's flight to the Republic of Congo was stopped by an Air France cabin crew after claims deportation minders had taped his legs and handcuffed him. Well, he subsequently claimed deportation was against his human rights and stayed in the UK.
He became a poster boy against deportation flights of illegal migrants, posing with a sign saying, "Migrants are not criminals." You couldn't write this. This news comes as the passage of the Rwanda Bill has been delayed by the House of Lords, blocking resettlement flights for those who enter the UK illegally.
Well, GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley joins us now. And Olivia, this couldn't paint a worse backdrop for yet another day of delay. We were thinking it could have passed. The whole bill could have passed today. Now it's kicked into yet another week.
Exactly, Tom. What we were expecting to happen last night was for the Lords' opposition to melt away. The government has a sizable, just about still, majority in the House of Commons. So the Lords, we thought, would put up a bit of a fight. But when it became clear that the government was determined to pass its flagship legislation, that sort of support for the blocking amendments would fall away. But that didn't happen. Last night, the Lords pushed through two different blocking amendments to this Rwanda Bill, which means that the bill will be back in the House of Commons on Monday. Eventually, one way or another, the government will almost certainly win this. It is a flagship piece of legislation from the Prime Minister, and the Lords, it would be democratically pretty tricky for the Lords to try and continue to block it. The problem is there is a pretty tight timeline on all of this. Rishi Sunak has said that he wants to get flights off the ground by the spring. Well, we're well into the middle of April by now, and even once the bill has received royal assent, probably at some point next week, we can expect another 6-week delay due to paperwork, potential legal challenges, etc. So we're getting very, very close to Rishi Sunak's deadline, and of course we're getting very close to the local elections as well. If no flights have left for Rwanda by the 2nd of May, well, that will be the nail in the coffin, I suspect, of Rishi Sunak's hopes for the local elections.
Olivia, what do you think the political costs will be of this for the Conservative Party going into those next elections? Is there a real worry that the Labour peers in particular might be trying to slow this down even more with the hope that this will damage the Conservatives?
I think that is definitely the worry for the Conservatives. There was a hope among Conservative MPs who I spoke to that Labour peers would be reluctant to block the bill on the grounds that they expect that soon a Labour Party will be in power in the House of Commons, and they wouldn't want to set a precedent for peers blocking government legislation. Well, if they were worried about that, that worry seems to have melted away, because last night Labour peers were all too happy to push through not one but two wrecking amendments to that bill. It is all a question of timing. The reason why Lords are still bothering to push ahead with these amendments, even though they know that ultimately they will be defeated, is because the longer this drags out, the more likely it is that no flights will be off the ground by the local elections. And that would be really, really damaging to Rishi Sunak's leadership position.
Really damaging indeed. Well, Olivia Utley, thank you very much for joining us live from Westminster. Let's get some more now with the political editor of HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield. Kevin, this is just a mess that Rishi Sunak did not want to see. Why did everyone get it so wrong, thinking it could be passed this week?
Well, that was certainly what we were being led to believe, that the government were keen to get it passed this week. And that's why everyone was very surprised. I was certainly surprised when I found out yesterday afternoon that instead of the bill returning to the House of Commons last night after the Lords passed those two amendments, it wouldn't be until next week. It could have been back today, but I'm told that Conservative MPs were put on a one-line whip, which basically means that they don't need to turn up. There are no important votes for them to take part in. And it's all very strange, because this is supposed to be, if you remember, emergency legislation. When it was first announced by Rishi Sunak back in November, the idea that it wouldn't have passed 5 months later, I think, would have been incredibly surprising if it was indeed meant to be an emergency. I mean, this has fallen on from the fact that it was delayed before Easter as well. There was a lot of surprise that the government didn't try harder to get it through Parliament before Easter. So yeah, it just seems very odd, as we were just hearing, given that Rishi Sunak has vowed to get these flights off the ground this spring.
Some might question Rishi Sunak's political judgment, given that he seems to have set himself up to fail here. Do you think that that was political naivety on his part? What reason would he have to make promises like by spring this year, in the knowledge that obviously Labour peers in particular are going to push back so much against this?
Well, of course, he's got form for making promises and not being able to keep them. If you remember, at the start of last year, he made the 5 pledges, one of them, of course, to stop the boats, and that clearly hasn't happened. He's managed to have inflation, but the other promises are looking a little bit dodgy, to say the least. So, yeah, I don't understand. I really do not understand why he makes himself a hostage to fortune, and then, having made these promises, why he doesn't absolutely break his neck in order to try and keep them, especially at a time when the public are pretty cynical about politicians in general, but the Prime Minister in particular. We've seen again another poll this morning which shows that his own personal ratings have completely cratered.
Such an odd thing for the Prime Minister to sort of put his political fortunes in the hands of a House of Parliament where he controls only 1/3 of the seats. But, Kevin, we've also got to talk about the other enormous story today. Rishi Sunak's lost yet another MP. The majority that once stood at 80 seats is today down to just 43.
Yeah, Mark Menzies has lost the party whip over allegations of misusing campaign funds in his seat in Lancashire. And it's really the last thing that Rishi Sunak needed. We saw yesterday at Prime Minister's Questions, he went on the attack over Angela Rayner, trying to obviously create a sense of Labour sleaze. And yet, here we are again talking about the Conservatives. It's only a week or so since William Ragg also gave up the Conservative whip over the honey trap scandal. And yeah, as I say, it is just the last thing that Rishi Sunak needs. And also I saw, incidentally, it's maybe a minor detail, but it means now that Tory rebels need one fewer letter to go in to the 1922 committee in order to trigger a no-confidence vote. So who knows whether that might be significant or not.
Yeah, it's gone down from 53 to 52, I think, which is interesting.
As some have pointed out, actually, with respect to Angela Rayner, that this is a case of those who are in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Do you think that, obviously, this is the case with the Conservative Party criticising Angela Rayner and then having another scandal like this, that actually this is obviously a problem across the House and that Labour would suffer from similar reputational issues if or when they are in government? Do you think that this is a problem in the culture of Parliament more generally, rather than a party political issue?
Well, there are 18 MPs now sitting as independents who were previously elected either Conservative, mainly Conservative or Labour. I think there's one Plaid Cymru and one SNP MP as well. So yeah, it's not just a Tory issue. And no doubt, if there's a lot more Labour MPs after the election, then I guess they might well find themselves more likely, at least, to be in this type of situation. But as I say, it's the worst possible timing for Rishi Sunak. They're already miles behind in the polls. There's just this feeling now, it's almost like before the 1997 election when there was lots of Tory sleaze around then, and it just seems to feed itself and it confirms the public's view, I think, that they want to see a change.